Hello, everyone. My name is Nami Surendranath, and I'm an intern at the Public Policy Center here at the University of Iowa. Today, I have Ethan Rogers, who will be discussing his research on crime and criminal justice policy. So, could you explain your work and what motivated you to start it?
Well, first off, thank you for having me, Nami. Glad to be speaking with you about some of my work here at the Public Policy Center. My graduate training comes from the Department of Sociology and Criminology. In fact, here at the University of Iowa, just graduated last year. And during my time in the graduate program, I largely focused on the trends and patterns of crime and violence. So specifically, I examined what factors are associated with the spatial distribution of crime across neighborhoods. I did also spend a considerable amount of time examining how and why our verbal disputes may escalate towards violence. But now, more recently, here at the Public Policy Center, I've really shifted my attention away from a focus explicitly on crime and violence and more towards more of an in-depth focus on criminal justice policy. So that includes policing policy, court policy, and correctional policy. And this work really has been done largely at the local level. So that includes cities around this area, as well as we did some work with the Johnson County Attorney's Office and hope to have some projects in Iowa statewide. But one bigger project that I've been working on that's a bit wider in scope is one with Dr. Mark Berg, who's the director of the Crime and Justice Policy Research Program here at the PPC, along with some other colleagues. And this project has been focusing on the health consequences of incarceration. So specifically, we're looking at how the experience of incarceration may act as a stressor that actually affects our physiological deterioration and may even accelerate how our bodies age. And this has some important policy implications, especially anytime we're having any conversations about mass incarceration.
How has COVID-19 altered the way that you kind of go about your research or the recommendations that you've come to?
I would say that the current pandemic has really altered the way I go about my research in two key ways. So, first, out of my interest in the health consequences of incarceration, I've considerably changed or increased my attention towards prison and jail policy, especially here in Iowa. So, with the help of Alex Tucholsky, our senior application developer, we've put together a website that is aimed at tracking how COVID has affected not only the health of incarcerated individuals and the folks who work within the system, but also how policy here in Iowa has changed in response to the pandemic. So, for example, we're tracking how the prison population has shifted from pre-pandemic levels to now. So, our website aims to just give a bit more detail, focusing specifically on Iowa and the 9 facilities here within the state. So our hope really is that Iowa policymakers and Iowa politicians and journalists and even researchers can use our website to really set a foundation for a comprehensive understanding of how this pandemic has affected the Iowa state correctional population and the folks who work within that system. The second way in which my research has changed is that I've expanded my focus on conflict and violence to really consider how various COVID-related stressors may be a source of conflict and potentially a source of violence. And that includes violence between our romantic partners, but also violence with other adults more generally. And so I'm doing some work on that through a survey that was given to nearly 1,000 Iowans, and that was supported by the PPC as well as the Iowa Social Science Research Center. And so I'm hoping we're going to be having some research briefs and publications coming out on that in the near future.
And my last question today is, how do you expect the post-COVID world to impact your findings?
In large part, I see the conversations around incarceration shifting quite a bit, or at least receiving more attention, right? So for one, I expect we're going to see a lot of research focusing on how COVID has affected the health of incarcerated individuals. But I also think we're going to see a growing focus on the adverse health effects of the stress of the pandemic, so beyond the disease itself. As an example here, we know that one of the first and main policy responses to this pandemic that has been more or less widely implemented, across the country, including Iowa, is the shutdown of visitations of friends and family for incarcerated individuals. And we know how important social support is for our health. So I expect we're going to see some attention on the adverse health effects of those types of policy decisions here in the years to come. And I do also think you're going to see some and many more continued conversations about mass incarceration in the United States, and how, especially in jails, we saw a rather historic decline in the correctional population across the country. And recent evidence suggests with little consequence to crime. But now we are seeing this slow and steady return to the pre-pandemic population levels. And so what's going to be interesting for me to kind of look at as we move forward is see how, or I should say whether, the Iowa prison population changes.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. That was Ethan Rogers and his research on crime and criminal justice policy. And I'm Nami Surendranath, an intern at the University of Iowa Public Policy Center.